I'm actually using a little tripod here, so if it looks like I'm further away or looks like I'm a little taller than usual, that's the reason why, because it's standing on my desk right now. But, yep, here we are. Day 2 of the off-season. It is New Year's Eve. Happy New Year, everybody. Mike Tomlin just had his last press conference for the season, and there were some interesting things in there, not surprising things. One of the big things, of course, was talking about the coaching, some possible coaching changes, which they said might happen, which I think should happen. I'll get into that a little bit. There's going to be more updates about Ben Roethlisberger over the next couple of weeks. They said, I think, in early February, they'll have more details on his progress there, which I think that's going to be a big deal going forward. Bud Dupree's a priority for them because, of course, his contract is up. And he basically said he's standing before you. He basically said in there, "I'm standing before you 8-8 and outside of the tournament, and that's not a place we want to be." Which, yeah, rightfully so. That's not where you want to be when you have, especially considering that you had a chance to get in, but that didn't happen. And Mason Rudolph is going to be the number 2 quarterback. So I don't know. I don't know if that still means they're not going to find somebody in the off season or in the draft. I think they should at least see. There's one person in there that I think they can get. That's Jalen Hurts, but that's only going to depend if he falls down to, I think, the 50th pick, which I think is the pick that they've got because they got rid of their first round pick. Tua Tagovailoa might be something big, but that's going to be. I still think he's going to go through in the first round despite the injury to him. But I've had some time to process the last season, and obviously it's not getting into the playoffs or going for a deep Super Bowl run. That's a big deal. But it's like I said at the top, whenever everything started going AWOL, kind of, but it's been an interesting season, to say the least. I think a lot of people can agree it's been one of those really odd seasons. I mean, yeah, 8-8 is not a place you want to be at, but when you consider everything that went down, all the injuries that took place, all the things that went awry, of course, what happened on Thursday Night Football, and everything that transpired, the mediocre play for the offense in the last couple of weeks. To be at 8-8, especially when you consider that the Cleveland Browns, who had all this hype and talent behind them, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, all these guys that they brought in, and they still managed to only finish 6-10, and we finished 8-8. I mean, that says a lot about this season. I mean, I don't think Mike Tomlin is going to get Coach of the Year for this, but you got to give the guy credit for working with what he's got, and I think he did a good job with working with everything that he had to work with. But with that said, though, how do I assess the season as a whole? Well, I mean, for the most part, I think Mason Rudolph, when he did play, for the most part, he was very good. I think if he had finished the entire game against the Jets, they probably would have won that game. But, I mean, we'll see what happens in year 2. I mean, it's his first year. I'm not going to take away anything from that. I don't think I think everyone's throwing the bus at him for not playing well, but he would. Excuse me. But he's still new to this. He's trying to get in there. This was his first year. He was pushed in there because of what happened to Ben Roethlisberger. And for the most part, I think he did a competent job. I think he could have been a lot better, but as he went along, he did evolve, and I think he will. If he does, I think we'll see what happens in this preseason coming up, whether or not how well he's improved over the last few weeks, over the last season, I should say. But for Devlin Hodges, it was fun while it lasted. I don't want to say that this is like it's like Tim Tebow kind of. I think everyone got into the hype, but Devlin Hodges I thought was okay until the other teams finally figured him out. But then once they figured him out, it's just like there's nothing really you could do at that point to stop him because I really is my biggest problem with this season on the offensive line. I think, like I said, it's been Randy Fichtner. I don't think he's been a good offensive coordinator. I really don't think he has, and I think it's because he was brought in there to basically work with Ben Roethlisberger, and once he didn't have Ben Roethlisberger there. Thought I saw something on TV for a second, but once he didn't have Ben Roethlisberger to work with, had to work with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges. I don't think he had a good idea of what he wanted to do. Like, as soon as Ben Roethlisberger got injured, it felt like he was lost a little bit, because when you do those Wildcat plays, yeah, it worked during the Cincinnati game, but it's against the Cincinnati Bengals. They only had 2 wins this season. But you can't do the Wildcat and expect that to work every single time. We saw that happen in the game after that against Baltimore, especially in the Buffalo game on Sunday Night Football. You had a chance to get points before the half to broaden your lead and not even broaden your lead, get the lead. And then you fumble the football. And I just don't think that he was ready for that. He was ready to work with these other quarterbacks. I think he had a plan to work with Ben, and then when he got injured, he was kind of lost. Like, there was really nothing he could do there at that point. But then, of course, with the wide receivers, you had the passing of Darryl Drake before the season, and of course, Juju Smith-Schuster really didn't have the season that everyone thought he was going to have, which is a little disappointing. But once again, you did have Ben Roethlisberger there, and you can't and everyone's already throwing the bus over Juju Smith-Schuster too. Like, they're thinking, and he's a bust. The first 2 seasons were just a mirage, but we don't know that. We'll see what happens next year. We have to see what happens next year whenever Ben comes back and everything gets back into place. But there were some stars this season. There was James Washington has had a more promising role. Deontay Johnson sure has a lot of promise to him. James Conner was kind of a disappointment this year, unfortunately, because he really couldn't stay healthy and all that. And they do have some running backs that could potentially be stars in the making as well. Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell's another good one. The tight end was a big disappointment this year. Vance McDonald didn't really get a whole lot of time this season, even though he was in every game. They didn't really utilize those tight ends very much. Nick Vannett, the guy they traded for, they barely used him. Like, I can't remember any time that he was actually in there and made quite an impact. But the offensive line was just kind of It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. You can definitely tell that Mike Munchak's presence was not there as much this year. But the defense, and I mean, the best thing that happened this season was the defense and how it improved. I got to give Keith Butler a lot of credit, because I've been saying for years that he should be fired. He's not a very good defensive coordinator, but this year he finally proved himself, because once he got Minkah Fitzpatrick and they finally realized that we've got 10 first-rounders on this defense and we can't make it work, they finally put it together, and that's why they had that streak in the middle of the season, and they looked great all season long. Bud Dupree had his best season. Joe Hayden made a major impact. Like I said, Minkah Fitzpatrick had a good year. T.J. Watt right now is a candidate for the Defensive Player of the Year, which I don't know if that's going to happen now because they're not in the playoffs, but I mean, it's tough to say what's going to happen next year, because I think that a dream situation would be for everyone to come back next year, which I don't think that's going to happen. I think Mark Barrett's going to be gone. Bud Dupree might try out free agency. Artie Burns has already pretty much said that he's out. But, yeah, the dream scenario to me is getting Bud Dupree back and most of them coming back, and hopefully getting some luck in the draft, getting some good defensive players. Maybe trying out from free agency. The Steelers aren't usually very good at free agency. They don't usually spend a lot on free agency, but this past year they actually did pretty well getting Steven Nelson. That was one of the big surprises this year, how well he did this year. And, I mean, it's tough to say how I really feel about the season, because on the one hand, the fact that we made it to 8 wins with the roster that we had was surprising. But then, when you had a chance to get in and you just completely fall apart in the last 3 weeks, only scoring about 10 points each game, that's really concerning. Like the last game against the Ravens, they really did not feel like they were playing for. They didn't want to play that game, because they pretty much knew that everything that they needed to happen was not going to happen. Like, Kansas City had already got the number 2 seed. New England was going to get the 3rd seed. Houston had nothing to play for, so they pretty much gave Tennessee the win. And Baltimore just rubbed it in their faces, and that Jets game really screwed them up. Like, you cannot lose to the New York Jets that way. Because you basically gave Le'Veon Bell and Hines Ward the win. You gave them the win. Like, that's pretty much what happened in the end. Like, you didn't bother to stop them. You didn't bother to do anything with them. But that loss was really the thing that killed the season right there. I think you can definitely tell that happened the following week. Because it didn't look like anybody on the defensive side was really trying. Until the very end when Joe Hayden got the interception in garbage time. But, I mean, I'm looking at the schedule for next year, and, I mean, you're going to play the Texans, you got to play the Colts again, Jacksonville, I can't remember who the other Tennessee, and then you got the NFC East teams, Dallas, New York, Philadelphia, Washington. Most of those are going to have new coaches, and then you've got the Denver Broncos, and then who's the other one? Blanking on it now. I will think about Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, and I mean that's an easy schedule to work with, because basically you don't have to go all the way across the country again, and Steelers haven't really been all that good on the West Coast, although they were successful twice this year against the Chargers and the Cardinals. But you're staying mostly on the East Coast. That may be a good thing, because that's what it was a couple of years ago when 2016 when they had to play Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets, and then Cowboys, Giants, Eagles, and Redskins again back in 2016. They made it all the way to the AFC Championship game. So, I mean, there's a possibility there that this team can rebound big time, but it's all going to depend on what happens with Ben Roethlisberger. I think that's going to be the big question going into this season, this offseason, is 1, Ben Roethlisberger's health going forward. 2, are they going to change the coaching staff? 3, are they actually going to take the opportunity to go through free agency and find some key pieces there? And 4, how are you going to handle the draft? Because you don't have a first-round pick. You have a second-round pick in the 50th pick. You're possibly going to get a third-round pick for a compensatory pick for Le'Veon Bell, which is another thing. Are they going to bring Le'Veon Bell back? Because everyone thought at first, oh, good, Le'Veon Bell's gone, the drama's gone, and all that. But now, after what happened this season, everyone's kind of done a 360 and be like, Le'Veon, please come back. And, I mean, you never know. You never know what can happen there. I want to believe the Steelers can rebound next year, and I think it's all going to depend on what happens in the coming months. I think they will. I think they have to figure out something. They have to figure out what's wrong with this team going forward, and I really do think they're going to hold up. They're going to find a way to figure it out and get it all back together again. I think it's going to happen, and I think that the Steelers can somehow find a way to compete again, because the AFC North is only going to get tougher from here, because they got to find there's going to be a new coach for the Browns, which might not have a whole lot of difference in there. The Ravens, I think, are still going to be very potent with Lamar Jackson under center. The Bengals are going to get Joe Burrow in the draft, maybe. I mean, we'll see stranger things happen. This could be a freezing cold take by that point, but the AFC North's not going to get any easier, and the Steelers need to make some changes and bring some people in to help them still compete. I think they made the progress this season. The draft class they have this year was overall pretty well. But, I mean, there's not much more to say except there's a little disappointment to the last season, but considering everything that went wrong and the fact that they were still able to put together a winning season, you can kind of still consider this season a success, but you also have to understand that the Steelers need to find a way to get it all back again. It's easy to say that this decade has not been the easiest for the Steelers at all. Losing to the Super Bowl to the Green Bay Packers, Tim Tebow beating them in the playoffs, Jesse James at the goal line to potential is that completely ruined the chances of the Steelers getting home field advantage. The fumbles, the interceptions, the costly mistakes. It's not been a good decade for the Steelers. Even though they've won division titles, they won Super Bowls. I think that's easy. I think that's easier said than done. They won Super Bowls, and they've got to do something to change that around. And hopefully, they'll take a good look at everything that they have going forward this season, this offseason, and they'll make it work. that's that's got to be the thinking they've got going forward. So, other than that, that's it. That's all I can really think about right now. And, yeah. I mean, there's not really much more you could say. It was an interesting season. It was an on and off season. And, yeah. 29, what a way for the decade to end. So, thank you folks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this journey through this season. We didn't get to accomplish everything I wanted to do. I never got a chance to go to any of the games themselves because of time constraints, work, and all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about this season. Thank you so much for watching. And will I do this again next year? Maybe, maybe not. I'm still trying to figure out my options there, but yeah, it's been a really interesting season, to say the least. And with that said, I'm going to venture off. So until next year, here we go, Steelers. Here we go.